It is my pleasure to introduce Christine Hart. She is an expert in relationship communications and gender intelligence. And her topic, men and women, how to bring out the best in each other to maximize the well-being of your family. Now, I'm not quite sure how much we can trust this woman. Not only because she's here among us, and we are all horrible people, but she did relay a little anecdote from her life. She said she was flown down to Mexico for 5 weeks to sing jazz in a bar after having no experience singing other than karaoke. And that kind of leads me to believe that maybe it just was all a front for running guns or something. So essentially, I mean, she looks really nice. She looks like a pleasant person, but you can't judge a book by its cover. And without further ado, now that I've assassinated her character, here she is, Christine Hart.
3 Shades of Red, that's me. Yeah, that was a fun experience, but that's a much longer story. We're not here to hear that one. So thank you for having me. It's an honor to be invited to speak here and to be involved with Cafe. And let me get my notes out here. So how many of you have experienced frustration in your conversations with the opposite sex? Yeah? Awesome. You're in the right place. You're absolutely in the right place. I think maybe I'll just, so your mind goes away from the Mexico trip more to what I do professionally. A little bit of background. I've been in the space of studying human dynamics and psychology and communication for about 17 years. My undergrad is in communication studies, conflict resolution, and 4 years studying gender intelligence down in California. And I'll speak more about specifically what that is, but essentially it's looking at conflict and what's going on through a gender lens. You can look at it through many different lenses, but my experience working with singles and couples, I found it particularly helpful to start with the gender lens. And I'm very passionate about creating partnership between men and women. I do believe that everything is figure-outable, and it's not necessarily a proper term, but even if you do decide this isn't right for you, at least it's amicable. I'm solution-oriented. And so I work both, as I say, with singles, couples, and now I'm working in corporations around conflict resolution and really seeing the other human being and humanizing. There can be we just get used to adversarial relationships, and that's just the way it is. But I don't want to live in that world. So I'm doing what I can to help with that. So I am, as I say, passionate about creating healthy communication between men and women. I absolutely don't draw absolute truths. And so what I provide is a potential perspective. So if you're looking at, well, all men aren't like that, or all women aren't like that, you're right. All men are not like that, and all women are not like that. But it's a lens and a perspective to look at it, maybe differently. Don't waste your time looking for exceptions, too, because there's always going to be exceptions to what I say. Because if you focus on the exceptions, you miss the learning. Let's see. And I am actually going to stick with the terms male-female rather than male and his feminine, female and her masculine, and just kind of hopping around there. But you're free to make your own adjustments in your head, but I'll be using the terms male and female. And let's talk about some of the things that you're going to be learning. How some well-known behaviors of both men and women frequently create misunderstanding and conflict. How women can effectively connect and be in partnership with men. How men can effectively listen to a woman. How women can ask for what they need in a way that's both empowering to themselves and empowering to the men in their lives. And lastly, top ways that men and women disempower each other without even knowing it. So we're going about our days disempowering each other without even knowing it. Okay? So gender intelligence. There's actually only one institution in all of the United States. I'm from Canada. Maybe I said that sounded like it's from the US. But there's a Gender Intelligence Institute, and then the company that I studied with in California is called PAX. And PAX is all about creating peace, Latin for peace, between the sexes. And I took one course about 10, 12 years ago now, and was immediately hooked because I could see how much of a difference this could make in my own life. So I certainly came at it originally almost personally, because I had a lot to learn at that time. Gender intelligence is an awareness of the intrinsic nature of men and women and the ability to be understanding and appreciative of these differences. So this is the key here, appreciative of those differences. Not why are you not more like me, appreciative of the differences. So the only thing that has changed in the last, the only thing that's changed in the last 30,000 years is complex language. And our DNA is the exact same as our cavewoman, caveman ancestors. So when you think about it that way, we are all cavewomen, cavemen who have just adapted to our modern day surroundings. We have phones, we have cars, we have apartments, but we're still, a lot of it is operating on our animal instincts and what we learned in the hunter-gatherer days. So I find that fascinating that that's the only thing that's changed since then. Men and women are not versions of each other. The key term is opposite sex. So that is oftentimes why we get upset with each other, because men will look at women and be like, you're like an emotionally overindulgent guy right now, right? Or women will look at men the wrong way as well, so women are not hairy men are not hairy women. So we are not versions of each other. We have to really get into that headspace if we're not misbehaving versions of each other. Because women, we can look at men and say, you're not behaving like an ideal woman would. So you're actually misbehaving, because an ideal woman wouldn't have done that in that situation, right? Men do the same thing. Judge women, an ideal man would have behaved in this way. So we have to get out of that and go back to opposite sex. The great news is our masculine and feminine strengths are designed perfectly to work with each other, within ourselves and with others. The key is to learn how to productively tap into each when needed, both within ourselves and interacting with others. So the more we can create balance with our masculine and feminine within ourselves, the more we are able to create balance with masculine and feminine in our relationships. One of my favorite couples therapists, if you haven't read any of her work, Esther Perel, she's a couples therapist for about 30 years. Her original work was in trauma. And she's been working as a couples therapist, and she's wrote a number of books. Specifically, she looks at infidelity. She's written actually 2 books on that topic. And in this number-driven, competition-driven world, everything to do with relationships is considered soft. And yet relationships are the drive behind it all. Right? So it's not like we can skip over that part and just get on with life. Relationships and how we interact with other human beings is actually what drives success or failure. I get into more about that when I'm speaking in business environments. So what do we really want? So I'm really, as I said in the beginning, I'm about humanizing the situation. What do we really, really want? What do we all want as human beings? From the cradle to the grave, humans desire a certain someone who will look out for them, notice and value them, soothe their wounds, reassure them in life's difficult places, hold them in the dark. We're wired to reach, trust, soothe, hold, and bond. You can tune into these innate abilities wherever you are, regardless of what you've experienced. You can build a relationship that feels like home. And that's a quote from Sue Johnson, who's a longtime relationship therapist. And this is where I feel like we need to be more forgiving of ourselves. I strongly believe that you've done the best you can with the knowledge you've had to this point. So there's no sense in actually making yourself feel bad for previous behaviors, because you know what? You did the best you could with the knowledge you had. So we need to give ourselves a break. And that's why I put this in here. We really need to give ourselves a break. There's actually nothing more difficult on the planet than navigating another human being. When you think about it, how complex we are. So we've got to give ourselves a break. So why do we act out? Why do we get upset? People do what they do to meet their needs. And the solution is, if their needs are being met, they don't act out, right? So our emotions are connected to our unfulfilled needs and longings. So that is where I encourage you to focus. The emotion is being acted out. So what is the need and the longing behind the emotion? So the example is, I feel angry when my need for closeness is not being met. And I'll give you more specific tools later on, but this is kind of an overview in the beginning. So I feel angry when my need for closeness is not being met. So we'll really, it's better to look at what is, when I first was learning about this, I was, one of my mentors was saying, when someone's complaining to you, it's almost like you have to look at what are they afraid to say they're really upset about. And so she said it's kind of like the chicken behind the need. What is it? So you can find that useful in a number of situations. So what can we do? I put a very romantic photo there. I thought, let's just get us in the spirit of what can we do? Start with trying out a new perspective. So this is one that, to get yourself out of the blaming of the other person, what if no one is misbehaving? So what if no one is intentionally going around trying to annoy or disrespect us? And when we're in that place, so often we'll get out of bed and we'll be like, yeah, I clearly did that to piss me off, or she clearly did that because she knows it gets under my skin. But what if we just kind of stepped outside of that and said, what if no one is intentionally going around trying to annoy or disrespect us? What if they're doing their best? They just don't have the tools yet. What if we are all doing our best based on the information we have available to us? And what if everyone is perfectly well-intended, but they're seen as failing because they are not sure what's needed? So when one person is not communicating what they need because they just assume that the other should just know, isn't that one of the biggest things? Well, they should just know. In the movies, they know. In my friend's marriage, they know. They should just know, right? That's a big mistake that we can make, is just assuming, and an unfair place for the other person in your relationship, that they should just know. So learning about each other and learn new tools for effective communication. So I definitely today, I wanted to give you some very specific language and tools that you could take home and apply and share with anyone in your life. So let's start with learning more about the male brain. I do an entire lecture from years and years and years of working focus groups with men to tell me like it is, over and over and over. And then my mentor held focus groups for another 20 years. So there's 30 years in here, which I found fascinating, because I certainly 10, 12, 13, 15 years ago, I certainly didn't understand men at all. We won't get into all of that. But I had no training ground, really. You know, how did I learn how to interact effectively with the opposite sex? It was kind of just I hope it goes well, you know, and when it doesn't, I don't know what to do now, right? So I kind of took that on as, ooh, this is a skill, and I'm going to put ego aside, and I'm going to accept this as this is a skill to learn, just like any other skill. I just took it a little more seriously and turned it into my profession. So men naturally want to help. Men are hardwired to be providers and protectors. And one of their primal needs is to feel needed. And this is what drives men. They want to help out, but when I hold focus groups with men, as I mentioned, they share with me that they're now living in a world where women do not necessarily need them. And I'm speaking just practically here. We're now in an age where, wow, women can do everything, like even babies on their own. We've never been here, so we're trying to navigate this new place. And I think what is at the root of a lot of it is, can you imagine if one of your primal needs was no longer needed? If you were constantly told, some men use the word constantly when they speak with me, some men use often, some men use sometimes once in a while, but yet it's all the primal need. If you're being told that you're not needed and your help is not needed because you're interacting with women who don't need your help and they're very vocal about not needing your help, that can be disheartening, right? So for years I thought I wanted to give you a little perspective from the female side of why this happens, because it was me. I thought if a man offered to do something for me, he probably thought I couldn't do it myself, right? He probably thought I couldn't, this was my made up story. If a man offered to help me with something, he probably thought I couldn't do it myself. So as a strong woman out to prove to myself, I was often taking over situations. Sound familiar? Any ladies in the office? Yeah, taking over situations. Even if I did ask for help from a man, I generally just took over halfway through. And this is embarrassing to tell you, but I'm being honest and vulnerable. And what I learned from the very first course that I took, that I sat in the back of the room with a pillow over me going, yeah, what am I going to learn here, right? To the instructor had us actually go out and ask men for help. How elementary does that seem? But that's where a lot of women are and have been, right? And we would go to a restaurant or a grocery store, and when I took the focus off just trying to prove I could do everything myself, I realized there was this mountain of testosterone and helpers in my everyday life that I hadn't been seeing. I hadn't been seeing because I've been too focused, making sure they don't think I'm dumb, stupid, incompetent, silly, girl, well, all these things that are running through our head that I know, guys, you're like, why is that going through your head? It just does. And so that's why sometimes we have a problem accepting help. So once I started accepting help, it was glorious. And I can remember I had just bought a condo and I needed to paint it, and I also needed to buy a car, and I was leasing for the first time. And two men in my life offered to help with both. And this was new learning. And so I accepted, and it was glorious. And it allowed me to eventually step more and more and more back into my feminine side, because I've been this, more masculine side, traveling the world, proving I could do it all myself. And then I stepped so far into that, I started teaching other women how to step into their femininity in a powerful way. And one last thing, you're not a damsel in distress. You're a powerful woman willing to be vulnerable, right? It's none of this damsel in distress stuff. Actually, men don't like damsels in distresses outside of the fairy tales, because it's kind of like, But a powerful woman that's willing to be vulnerable, that's a woman men want to help. Okay. Men and women see differently. So actually, vision. There's a whole talk I can do with all science, but I just pulled some highlights here to lead into some of the tools that I'm going to give to you. So men and women see differently. Single focus versus diffuse awareness. So hunters are single focus. The reason being, hunt the deer, hunt the deer, hunt the deer, hunt the deer. If they were not single focused, the tribe would perish, because if they left the camp and went out to find the deer and got distracted, the tribe would perish, right? So that's where single focus came from in the beginning as hunters. Hunters have track vision, which makes them better at spotting moving objects. So it's not a blanket statement, but for the most part, men are better at, say, fast-moving video games and stuff. That's one example. Or another example is those boosts that they used to blow up the money and you'd stand. So the faster the money would move, the easier it was for guys to catch it. But for women, it's very overwhelming. Once you speed up, the things coming out like dodgeball and stuff, it's horrible for women sometimes, because I'll get into it because we have diffuse awareness, whereas men can more zoom in, right? Hunters require transition time between tasks or environments, and sometimes these are short shifts, and sometimes these are longer shifts. So if you think you're going about your day doing producing one result at a time and being single focused, producing, transition time becomes very important. And sometimes with transition time, I've actually had relationships saved because they have implemented transition time into their lives. And growing up, when I was first learning about this, I learned that my dad used to do transition time. So he'd have producing the result of working, and when he'd come home, he'd go through a ritual where he'd take the stuff out of his pockets, right? Nowadays, it's cell phones and keys. And then he'd usually change into something else that signified that he was now home. So for some men, it is turning in, shorts and a t-shirt. That's your transition. You're now present, you're now home. Other men, they just roll up their sleeves, taking off their tie, they're home, right? And then they'll engage in an activity that is just one way. So reading the mail, reading their phone, anything that is not two-way, so they can knock their day out, right? And then be present. A lot of conflict happens when transition time is not granted in the home, which is unfortunate because we don't know that it's there to be granted. In a lot of home environments, you just can't because there's little ones coming at your feet as soon as you walk through the door. So that's when you get your transition time in the car or around the block before you come into the home environment. And I've seen that when men are granted this transition time, and women, sidebar, and even I know one family, they said, okay, 5 minutes. We've only, 5 minutes before the kids are at you. Right? So he decided, I'm gonna come in the door, I'm gonna wave, and I'm gonna go upstairs, I'm gonna have a shower, and then I'm gonna come back down, and it'll be 6 minutes, and then I'll be super dad. Right? And it worked. It worked because it's allowing that, and there's short transition time, but we won't get into that. And hunters are also results-oriented. Results-oriented. And so one quick story is that a client, it was a male colleague of a female colleague of mine, so her male colleague. She was at the downtown office and she had left a file on her desk at her office, at her home office. And she asked him to come and pick it up, and she had left a box of his wine glasses that she had borrowed from him right by the door, right? And so he arrives at the office and he says, here's the file. And she's like, that's great, thanks for picking that up, I forgot it. And she's like, did you get the wine glasses too? And he's like, no, what wine glasses? And she said, well, the wine glasses, like I put your wine glasses right by the door. Like you would have had to trip over them, right? So she's kind of giving him a hard time. But what she learned, she's like, no, I didn't see it. What she learned is that the wine glasses had nothing to do with creating the result of getting the file folder to her office. Do you see that? Had nothing to do, so screen it out. Okay? Gatherers, women, have diffuse awareness rather than single focus. So we have scan vision and we are taking in everything at all times. I'm doing it right now. I know all of your emotional states. I know what you had for lunch. So we're taking in everyone at all times, and I do believe we do have eyes on the back of our head too, like our moms told us with teachers growing up. We have scan vision instead of track vision. And I remember in my 20s, I was dating a guy, and whenever we would go out for dinner, he found it fascinating that I could scan the room and really know what was going on. And he was like, hungry, restaurant, menu, order, where's the server, And he's like, okay, now that I've ordered, I can focus. What's going on? And I would tell him little stories of like, oh, that couple's fighting. The chef has a crush on the server. He's like, how did you do this? I'm like, scan vision. But we had to do that as gatherers because we were looking after the camp. And we had to make sure none of the kids fell into the fire, nobody ate poisonous berries, and we had to be all things at all time to make sure the camp stayed safe. So gatherers require zone time instead of transition time. And zone time is just literally where they're not giving out energy and they're not taking in energy. So for some women, that's reading a magazine. For some women, that's a bath. For some women, that's watching a particular reality show. So it's just, so if you ever hear a woman go, I just need to zone out, that's what's happening. We just need to zone out. And gatherers are task-oriented over results-oriented. So we can feel totally productive completing tons of tasks. And when a man comes in and asks us, well, what result did you, they're not going to say it quite that literally. We're like, but I did all these tasks. Because we can feel that same fulfillment that you guys get from results through a bunch of tasks, ticking off things on our list, yeah. But maybe none of them produced a full-on result, right? We can feel accomplished there. All right, men and women, this is the last distinction here before we go into tools. Men and women listen differently. Okay, so this is another relationship saver, to know how we listen differently. The first is listening to learn. Our default way of listening in society is, do I agree or disagree with this person? And you're probably all doing it right now. Do I agree or do I disagree? That is our default way of listening. What we've moved away from is listening in a way to get to know that person better. What does that person value? Men have an amazing way of revealing what they value through their opinions. So as women, if we can step away from, do I agree or disagree with his opinion, and his opinion can tell us more about who he is as a man and what he stands for, then we can get to know men on a deeper level, right? So listening to learn is just no longer listening just to see how what you're saying relates to me, or when is it my turn, or what you're saying, doesn't that feel empty when you have conversations in relationships or friends? Where it's like, wow, I just told you a bunch of stuff and you've just kind of taken it away. What if you're saying, wow, I can really tell that family is important to you, or that relationships are important to you, that love is important to you, the family is important to you. So repeating back is like receiving a warm blanket. Wow, this person heard me, which we don't get a lot. And if you can name one person in your life that hears you, you're a lucky person, that hears you in a way that you don't feel like you're taking up their time or they enjoy hearing you. That's an important, if you don't have that person in your life, look for that person. Ask around for that person that you just want to feel heard. That's what I think is at the root of a lot of it. We're feeling underappreciated as a whole, as human beings, in our relationships and in life, and we're not feeling heard. So that's why we're acting out. But that's a whole other bigger topic. Waiting for the well. Really breathing into this. Okay. The short version of waiting for the well is when women are talking to each other, we are very used to cutting each other off. We don't call it that way, but it's connecting. We'll finish each other's sentences. Oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah, there's meant to be. We're literally cutting each other off because being disconnected, our cave woman is like, we'll get attacked by the tigers, right? So I know that's a big stretch there, but connection is everything to women. Feeling connected is everything. It is linked to our need, our survival instincts. is the need to feel connected. And so when we're conversing with other women, that's how it shows up. Then we bring that into our conversations with men, and men are like, why do you keep cutting me off? Why do you keep doing that? Why do you, like, just let me finish, right? So men have, in many relationships, have adopted their communication style, edited right down. This is all they want to say, but they keep it here because they're just tired of being cut off, right? And so if you know that that's why women do it, is that we get uncomfortable and we like to overlap things, then you can have a little more compassion and you can actually talk about that. And you can actually say things like, I really want to get my full thought out. Quite literally. You know, yeah, sometimes you have to start there with very literal statements to get the conversation going. And it doesn't have to be angry, but I'd like the opportunity to finish my complete sentence here. So waiting for the well, what men have told me is many men have said to me that they have never, ever had the opportunity to feel fully expressed with a woman that they're romantically involved with. That's big, hey? That's big. And so if we can, I think the gift of listening, again, is you ask a man a bigger question. You can, where the waiting for the well comes in, is you can see that he's going down for water, bringing it back up, and maybe these are the first thoughts that he'd like to share on your question. And then if you don't come in and bring it back to you or whatever, then he will go down again and bring it back up. Go down again. And the great thing about you guys is that you will actually say at the end, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, that's it. Right? So it's about us being more comfortable, and these things that I'm sharing, I encourage you to share them with the women in your life. Holding the trash. So because we as women gatherers, diffuse awareness, we're always in overwhelm, stimuli in the world. Sometimes a good example is when you come home from work and your guy's there and you're just like, you've had the worst day, and you start like unloading your day, and your guy, because men listen for point or problem. What's the point or what's the problem? What's the point or what's the problem? You're presenting him with a problem. So he's going to come in and try and start to solve your problem. But in those moments where we're in overwhelm as women, all we want to do is decompress. And when you're trying to solve the problem, we fill back up again. It's like stuffing the words back in our mouth, and that's where a lot of fights with couples happen again. Transition time, this is called holding the trash. And so guys, if you're not sure what she needs at that time, ask her, hey, do you want me to just hold the trash? She's like, yeah. And then she'll just unload her day. And the great thing is, all she wants to do in that moment is for you to listen. That's it. Even if there's a problem to be solved, you have to just hold yourself back from that. And then you'll see that she's stepping more and more. She's deflating, and you're just holding the trash. And all you need to do is, anything else? Anything else? Or poor baby. Or, oh, that sucks. Oh, like you're not passing opinions or anything like that. But it's, And sometimes men, when I'm sharing this, they're like, yeah, when do I know when she's done? Like, how do I know? Well, you listen for, we have a physical response. So think of it as decompressing. Anything in life like decompressing. What does it let out? Right? So we will go, but don't be tricked that time. Ask if there's anything else and allow us to go through our day again. Yes, and then this guy, and then this guy, and then this girl, and then this dog, and these kids, and it's like, anything else? Anything else? And then what you get as the gift is a fully present feminine woman who's no longer out there in her masculine trying to produce results. Okay, so that's just a simple question you can ask. You want me to hold the trash, or do you need me to solve a problem here? Just hold the trash? Okay, got it. It's that easy. This, I could not resist including this slide. I can't go on about it much at all. But this was a study, oh, it's cut off there, but if you want the information, you can contact me. But this was a study where they asked men and women the exact same questions, and they followed their line of thought through, like water molecules that followed where they went in their brain to answer the exact same questions. And isn't that interesting? Where the male brain went on either the right or the left, and the female brain for every single question, crisscross, crisscross, crisscross. So when you see a visual like that, like, isn't that cool? That's really cool. So more ways to be in partnership. So time in your feminine, sex and intimacy, providing feedback, making deals, specific language to use. Thank you. Ooh, I might go over by 5 minutes. Okay. One of the keys to making relationships better is to even out the balance. And women are confused in today's society about the value of being in the feminine. But these are some quick things that I can say on it. Rates of adrenal fatigue are skyrocketed with women in the last 10, 20 years. Adrenal fatigue is not something that's necessarily you can get better from. So it's not curable. So once you get it, it's a slow road back to recovery. So my belief is, how can we not get adrenal fatigue? When they looked at it, it was all the similar things that all women who suffered from adrenal fatigue had, is they were spending far too much time in their masculine. Far too much time, and not engaging, like I didn't, the men in their lives to help them get back into their feminine, to create the balance again within themselves and within the relationship. So how do you know whether you're in your masculine or feminine? Well, in the masculine you're doing, and your feminine you're being, right? So men can easily tap into their feminine side as well, and that's just as important. And through things like Tai Chi or yoga or meditation or going for a walk, all those things where you're not necessarily producing a result. Access to, men need femininity, right? You as women are the portal to ecstasy in all forms. So it's something that men crave, is the feminine. And so when we're all out there fighting for the masculine role, what's happening to our planet, to our relationships, if we're losing the value on the feminine? Men have 60 times more testosterone than women. 60, not 6, not 16, but 60 times more testosterone than women. So that's another thing we need to take into account when we're talking about adrenal fatigue. It's the polarity between the masculine and the feminine that keeps the desire there. When we step into neutral states, as men and women, that's when the desire wanes. So that's why it's important as well. And how can you communicate what you need? Is you've got to first start with, I love this, I need more of this. I love this, I need more than this. When I'm working with couples, it's kind of like the sandwich approach. I need, I love this, I need this, thank you for this. I love this, I need this, thank you for this. So identify, or men, I'll also remind you that we have this ideal woman that lives in our head all the time, that we're always comparing ourselves to, the ideal woman. And so helping us mute that is super helpful. And learning how to receive. So we did an exercise earlier this morning, and it was difficult to receive compliments as well. So as women, spending more time in our feminine means being able to receive as well. And it's not a sign of weakness, it's received, so you can be of more use to the world. If we continue to try and do it ourselves all the time, then we're not of much use to the world because we're spending too much energy. So sex and intimacy, we can't have a talk about relationships without talking about sex and intimacy. So I'm going to give you some facts here that will hopefully help. So first is our relationship to sex is different between men and women. Men need sex as a basic need. Women like and love sex. Okay? So we need, but the difference causes the conflict. Basic need like food, water, sex versus like, love, depending on, so men can reproduce 365 days of the year, whereas women, we have a small window, right? So that's what, from our DNA standpoint, that's what drives that. But if we know this about each other, that starving a man of a basic need is not going to make him want it less, right? Men need to have sex to feel connected, whereas women need to feel connected in order to have sex. To see where that conflict happens there, right? So you can look there. Men need to have sex to feel connected. Women first need to feel connected in order to have sex. Okay? Men have 60 times more testosterone in their bodies than women. Compassion around this, because we are now, we are now able to do studies where women are taking higher doses of testosterone for various reasons, and it is incredible. One woman I spoke with, the amount of rage and anger and like that she wasn't used to, and her sex drive and everything. So I think we need to have compassion that from a very young age, men have done an incredible job of taming the levels of testosterone so you can operate in society respectfully. So I think that's a place that we don't often look of, like all the things that men are doing so that they don't reach out and, grab something beautiful, right? So I think we need to spend more time having compassion, because if the roles are reversed, and I wish somebody would make a movie where we just gave all women male levels of testosterone for a day and filmed it. So reverse engineer all the desires that you have in your sex life to see what needs to happen in order for the act to happen. So I won't go into more detail on that, but what if we want to do this, what needs to happen here? What needs to happen the day before? So you're both speaking your needs in order for when the act actually happens. And again, I'll keep it PG. If you're offering feedback, it makes me really happy when I love having sex with you. Something that would make it even more amazing would be not, no, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong, no, not like that, this, right? It's like, I like this, I want more of that. That's how you deliver, in a healthy sex life, that's how you deliver feedback. And no trades. None of this game work. If you do this, I'll give you a little something, right? Then it becomes like this trade. And it really makes guys feel, and women, feel like, trade, I want you because you want me, right? Not because I picked up the kids from soccer practice, right? So you've got to keep the sex relationship outside of what's going on in the rest of the family. Okay, I'm going to race through these key tools. This is my last slide here. I will mention, because I'm short on time, if you want my notes or the slides, my business cards are out in the front, and you're welcome to email me and I will send you everything from today. So asking the right questions. What is it you need from me that you have given up on getting? I'm going to say it again. What is it that you need from me that you've given up on getting? This is a very, very, very powerful question that you use sparingly. When things have gone really sideways, that's your starting point. Couples ask me, well, where do you begin? Well, you create a safe space first, and there's steps and steps to create the safe space. Talk time. And then, what is it that you need from me that you've given up on getting? And within that, that's where you're practicing listening to learn. Listening to learn You're not saying, oh, but I still give that, or, he's wrong or she's wrong. It's just a place to listen. Provide feedback in a way that is helpful. Again, this is what I love and this is what I want more of. Feedback that starts with, you did that wrong, or why'd you do it that way, or rant, rant, rant. I can change that. But this is what I love and this is what I want more of. And you can use that in all areas of your life, work or otherwise. Become a better listener. We spoke about that. So key things you could say is recognize that communication cannot occur on top of resentment. So you need to look at what is happening underneath, because neither of you will hear anything. Communication won't occur if it's on top of resentment. So nothing happens on top of resentment. So we've got to get the reasons behind the reasons behind the reasons first. And don't use these types of listening styles. There's like 20 of them, but I've only captured 2 here. Downplaying. You ever said something to someone and they gave you downplaying listening? Oh, it can't be that bad. Most everyone has problems with their bosses. That's life. Right? When you're sharing something that is really important to you and you get the downplaying listen, so don't be the downplaying listener. Or distracting. This is the worst. Well, no, it's not the worst. There's worse. Distracting is, but you're not at work right now. The day is beautiful. Stop and smell the roses. Right? But no, I don't want to stop and smell the roses right now. I want to be heard. So that, and just so you have compassion, the only reason the person is doing the deflecting or distracting is that they're uncomfortable with you sharing. So then sometimes, based on who you're talking to, you can be like, okay, thanks, and share it with somebody else. You've learned that this person's uncomfortable with you sharing. Or if this is someone that you're attached to, like, what I need from you that I think you're able to provide is this type of listening. Right? Make deals. There's no winners or losers in deals. There's this adage of people saying, oh, it's all about compromise. It's not about compromise, because you know what happens in compromise? Somebody loses. Somebody's going without what they actually want. So making deals where you both feel like you're getting the best part of the deal. You both have to do an activity on Sundays and you go someplace for a full day. Well, what if you go for half a day now? You're still going, but it's a half a day. So it's deals. So get compromise, that thing that we've been following us around with relationships. Relationships are about compromise. No. I stand for no. They are not about compromise. They're about deal making. Time to talk, no distractions. The needs of your partner must be your priority. And I don't see enough of that. The needs of your partner must be your priority. And there was that beautiful diagram earlier from one of the speakers of your relationship with your partner. So none of this, I'm going to put that off until the kids are out of soccer camp, or I'm going to put that off until this or that. No, now. Now is when relationship is priority, so that you're better able to give as parents too. Each person talks and is fully heard. You also have to cover what appreciation looks like. So we can't assume that we know how the other person feels appreciated. What does support look like for you? So what does not, I need to feel appreciated, how do I appreciate you is a good question to say after that. How do you feel supported? Certainly Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages, is a good place to start on that one, learning each other's love languages. Okay, 3 more pieces of language and then I'll wrap it up. So I encourage you to try on new language. One of them is, when I feel that way, what helps me feel reassured is. So when I feel that way, what helps me to feel reassured is. Next time we get disconnected, would you consider blank? Next time we get disconnected, would you consider? And I can work on being responsible for. So you're not dancing around it necessarily, but you know what? You've realized this is important to your partner. I can work on being responsible for blank. And then the last two is probably current language that you could adjust. Instead of saying, no, you said, you ever had that? No, you said. What you can change it to is, what I heard you say is. And you'd have to really, I didn't transition there as well, but what I heard you say is. What I heard you say is, right? So you're taking ownership back. And instead of you never, use I need this, would you consider this? There's many more, many more. So if there's anything about today's talk that you found helped or you want to learn more about, I am here for most of the rest of the day, otherwise my business cards are here. And what I wish for you is to humanize your experiences and to use some of these tools that partnership is possible and peace between the sexes is possible. And that's where I hope that our world is headed. And the more that we can practice it in our everyday life with the tools, with proper tools, the better things will become. So thank you very much.